hili lijichukue kama bunge la kitaifa. Ripoti ambayo inakuja hapa iangaliwe kwa mujibu wa kitaifa, na tusione kwamba pengine mambo ya sukari basi ni wabunge wa magharibi peke yao ndio wafaa kuchangia upande fulani na wengine wao wanapinga. Jambo la haki liwe ni la haki pia vile vile. Na katika ripoti hii pia vile vile, Mheshimiwa Spika, tumeona ya kwamba kumekuwa na bidii na juhudi za kuwa motion hii iangushwe, kwa sababu kulikuwa na mawaziri ambao walikuwa lazima wakingwe wasije wakaumia. Na nafikiria Mheshimiwa Spika, hii si mwendo ambao bunge hili lafaa kuchukua. Ikiwa tunataka kukomesha ufisadi, ni kila ambaye atakuwa ametajwa aachiwe, apawe nafasi, aweze kuulizwa na aweze yeye mwenyewe kujisafisha, na hivyo tungeweza kukomesha mambo ya ufisadi katika nchi yetu. Pia vile vile, Mheshimiwa Spika, hata jana katika ripoti ya Senate waliokuwa wakijadili mambo ya Ruaraka, tuliona bado kuna watu walikuwa wanakingwa katika hiyo ripoti, na nafikiria mwendo huu ukiendelea itakuwa sisi kama bunge hatutekelezi kazi yetu sawa sawa. Na mwisho, Mheshimiwa Spika, napenda kuangazia prayers zetu katika hii bunge kabla hatujaanza kikao chetu. Tunasema, ewe Mwenyezi Mungu ambaye kwa hekima na wema wako umeteua nyadhifa za viongozi na mabunge kwa ustawi wa jamii na utawala wa haki wa wanadamu, twakusihi ututazame kwa neema nyingi sisi watumishi wako ambao umeridhika kutuita ili tutekeleze shughuli muhimu. Hii, Mheshimiwa Spika, ni moja katika jambo ambalo tutatakiwa tulizingatie sisi. Na mwisho kabisa yasema pia vile vile twakuomba ututeremshie baraka zako sisi tuliokutanika hapa. Na mwisho inamalizia ikisema ufanisi na heri ya nchi hii yetu na wale ambao haja zao umezikabidhi mikononi mwetu. Sasa ikiwa, Mheshimiwa Spika, wananchi wametukabidhi sisi majukumu ya kuangalia maslahi yao, ya kuangalia mambo yao yaende sawa sawa, na ikiwa tutaenda kinyume chao itakuwa hatutekelezi kazi zetu.
The Honorable Mwinyi, you remember at the beginning we said that you will have 5 minutes, but 1 minute for you to second.
Naomba Mheshimiwa dakika moja. Asante sana. Tulikuwa na kizaazaa wakati tulikuwa tumeenda katika inspection ya kule chooni. Mheshimiwa Spika, ilisemekana wabunge wanawake hawafungi milango yao wakienda chooni, na hili ni jambo ambalo hatukuweza kulithibitisha kwa sababu hatungeweza kwenda chooni huko wakati wao wako pale. Kwa hivyo pengine tungefanya utafiti zaidi kwa wabunge wa kina mama watuelezee kama wakienda chooni huwa mlango yao wanaacha wazi, kwa sababu hii ni tatizo kubwa sana ambalo kamati yetu ilipata. Na kwa hayo na unga mkono kamati hii na ripoti hii pia vile vile. Asante sana.
The Honorable Leader of Majority, what is out of order?
Mheshimiwa Spika, nasimama kwa hoja ya nidhamu. Na Mheshimiwa Mwinyi, ile lugha ameitumia si lugha ya bunge, na ni lugha ambaye si starabu, kusema ya kwamba wengine wetu hapa wakiingia chooni hawafungi mlango. Hiyo ni aibu kubwa sana, na ningeomba umwambie kama hiyo iko katika ripoti ni sawa. Kama iko kwa ripoti ni sawa, lakini kama iko kwa ripoti atoe hiyo hoja.
Mheshimiwa Mwinyi, hamna haujakosea nidhamu. Kwa hivyo mtanikubalia niweze kusoma hoja vile iko. Tafadhali. Honorable members, allow me to propose the question that this House adopt the report of the Committee of Powers and Privileges on the inquiry into allegations of bribery of some members of the National Assembly during consideration of the report of the joint sittings of the departmental committees on agriculture and livestock and trade, industry and cooperatives, on the inquiry into alleged importation of illegal and contaminated sugar into the country, laid on the table of the House on Tuesday, November 20, 2018. Yes, the Honorable Pukose.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, that the motion, I would want to move that the motion be amended by inserting the following expression immediately after expression November 20, 2018, subject to deletion of paragraph 7.2 on page 46, recommendations of the report, and substituting therefore the following new paragraph on recommendations, that in view of the foregoing, taking into account the contradictions and inconsistencies in the evidence of the witnesses who appeared before the Committee of Powers and Privileges, and the fact that the committee lacks capacity to conclusively investigate such matters which may border on criminality, the House notes that the honorable members who made claims of bribery against fellow members are at liberty to make formal reports to other relevant competent state investigative agencies to undertake investigations. Mr. Speaker, as you've heard from the chair of the committee, he's reported that there might have been corruption. And if there might have been corruption, we would not want to CAG members who feel that maybe the evidence they gave to the committee might not have been acted upon. We would want them to have liberty to go to other investigative agencies and make those claims and provide evidence so that the individuals who are involved can be investigated and be prosecuted. Mr. Speaker, I would not want to have a blank check for all the 349 members of parliament to be waiting who is next to be investigated on this matter.
The Honorable Pukose, not to interrupt you, honorable members, this proposed amendment by the Honorable Pukose has received the approval of the Speaker, and I direct that it should be distributed to all the members so that they have it in their hands. Proceed, the Honorable Pukose.
So, Mr. Speaker, my aim of the amendment, Mr. Speaker, is to delete the recommendation that the committee made in terms of the DCIO to investigate all the 349 members. Mr. Speaker, we know that there are honorable members here who would not want to be going to their constituencies and feel that they are under investigation. So that's the import of my amendments, and I would want to urge the House to support that amendment. So I ask the Majority Leader to second.
Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As I second, the Speaker, I really want to support this amendment, because minus this amendment, what the committee was doing was to ask the DCI and EACC to investigate the 349 members. Speaker, that's exactly what the recommendation, and I really want to thank Honorable Pukose for being that. If you are the person who is making allegations, go out, even go to the DCI even today. Go to the EAC today and say and make allegations and investigation to be opened. But when you give a blanket check, and the Speaker, in my life as a member of Parliament, Parliament is an institution, and we must protect the independence of the institution, the way the judiciary is protecting its just because, and the Speaker, I've just read the report. It's very, very sad. When a honorable female member of Parliament appears before the Privilege Committee and says that when we go to the toilet, we don't close. That is height of irresponsible. It's childish. Even my kid, who is 7 years, closes the door. It's very shameful. And I think if there are cameras there, we should not put cameras there. But, Mr. Speaker, this is a very good amendment. I support, because you cannot indict the 349 members, and in fact 50, including the Speaker. If you have a problem with the Fatuma Gedi, if you have a problem with Omar Mwinyi, you go to the independent investigative agencies. Do not involve Honorable Jessica. Do not involve Honorable Nikal and myself. So this amendment is very good, because they could not provide conclusive evidence. to what they said, the member is saying, you are at liberty because you could not prove your allegations in front of the committee chaired by the Speaker. Now walk to the DCI, walk to EACC. You know, strip yourself of the immunity that the powers and privilege gives to you. When you become a member of parliament, you enjoy certain immunity when you are within the precinct of parliament. And that's why, Mr. Speaker, when you are speaking on the floor of this house, you have got free thought and free speech and free conscience. You can say anything on the floor of the house, Mr. Speaker. At the rate which we are going, and you know, this surgeon, I had a problem. I have been asking even the clerk, are you sure this recommendation is in order? But I'm happy a surgeon has dissected the problem, and he has found out where the tumor is, and he has removed the tumor, and now he's sending those who are sick patients to the wards. I beg to second. And you put the question.
Honorable members, allow me then to propose the question so that you can deal with what the surgeon has proposed. I propose the question that the motion be amended by inserting the following expression immediately after the expression November 20, 2018, subject to deletion of paragraph 7.2 on page 46, recommendations of the report, and substituting thereof the following new paragraph 7.2 recommendations. That in view of the foregoing, taking into account the contradictions and inconsistencies in the evidence of the witnesses who appeared before the Committee of Powers and Privileges, and the fact that the committee lacks capacity to conclusively investigate such matters which may border on criminality, the House notes that the honorable members who made claims of bribery against fellow members are at liberty to make formal reports to other relevant, competent state investigative agencies to undertake investigations. Is that the mood of the House? Honorable members, I put the question that the motion be amended by inserting the following expression immediately after the expression November 20, 2018, subject to deletion of paragraph 7.2 on page 46 recommendations of the report, and substituting thereof the following new paragraph 7.2 recommendations. That in view of the foregoing, taking into account the contradictions and inconsistencies in the evidence of the witnesses who appeared before the Committee of Powers and Privileges, and the fact that the committee lacks capacity to conclusively investigate such matters which may border on criminality, the House notes that the honorable members who made claims of bribery against fellow members are at liberty to make formal reports to other relevant competent state investigative agencies to undertake investigations. Will as many of that opinion say aye? Aye. Will as many of the contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. Honorable members, now this is the directions on how to proceed with this. We shall proceed with debate on the report as amended, taking into account the amendment that you have just approved. And I see the first member on my list here is the Honorable Atandi Onunga.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, before I begin, I would like to thank Honorable Pukose for the amendments that he has introduced. Mr. Speaker, when I went through this report last week, when it was tabled, I was disturbed, Mr. Speaker, because I felt that the committee had done a shoddy job. Mr. Speaker, looking at the report, you look at the submissions that were given by members of parliament who are invited. Mr. Speaker, the conclusion and the recommendation that came from this committee demonstrated that, Mr. Speaker, the committee probably is in touch with the reality of parliament. And Mr. Speaker, from the word go, let me say that what was the reason for Powers and Privileges Committee to begin to investigate members of parliament. The reason was that there were some media reports that portrayed members of parliament having been bribed. And Mr. Speaker, members of parliament are not going to act on the basis of what the media writes, because it appears that right now parliament is under attack from the media. The media appear to be writing false information about what parliament is doing with the sole purpose of putting members of parliament at loggerheads with the public. And this is not going to be the situation we are going to act on. Mr. Speaker, right now, if you look at the bill that is being discussed, the PSC bill, the information that the media has given out as far as the contents of this bill is concerned is erroneous and false. And this is purely to ensure that members of parliament are people who are not respected, people who are going to be attacked everywhere by the public. And I want to urge this House to be resistant, to be resilient, and to protect its integrity. The other issue that I've observed, Mr. Speaker, in this report is that the committee was relying on newspaper cuttings to establish the integrity of members of this House. Because, Mr. Speaker, members of parliament were invited to this committee on the basis of newspaper cuttings. What members said in rallies, in funerals,
the Honorable
as a
Mwinyi,
basis
I
for
hear you saying
investigating
point of
integrity of members of this.
Honorable Atandi, just hold on 1 second. The Honorable Mwinyi, I hear you saying point of information. Whether you want to inform...
Mr. Speaker, I would like to inform Honorable Atandi that we did not actually act on the basis of newspaper cuttings, but it is as a result of members of parliament casting aspersions on their colleagues. And they're the ones who went to these newspapers. So you can't accuse the committee of having done a shoddy job and maybe acting on the basis of newspaper cuttings, but we were acting on the premise that some members of parliament went to accuse their colleagues.
The Honorable Mwinyi, that is not a point of information. That's a point of argument. Allow the Honorable Atandi to make his contribution.
Mr. Speaker, I went to school very well, Mr. Speaker. I am a graduate of Egerton University. Mr. Speaker, I'm very good in English. I have read this report, and I'm talking about what I understand and what I know. Members of parliament were invited to this committee based on information that appeared in newspapers. And Mr. Speaker, some of the information appeared in newspapers. For instance, were members reacting to what initially had been captured and written by the newspapers themselves. We do not know the sources of their information. I have not seen anywhere in this report where a journalist has been invited and asked to explain the source of his information. Because if the journalist said in the papers that so-and-so was bribed, there should be the people to give that evidence. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, we are not going to allow this House to be turned into some form of piggy bank where the public is kicking the members of parliament left, right, and center, and our own committee is making some funny recommendations of members of parliament to be investigated by the CID. Mr. Speaker, if this committee did not find any evidence to link any member of this House to corruption, they should have made a very clear report and said we did not find any evidence. But they cannot hide behind the CID and say that now let us have these members being investigated. This is a fake report, and thank God for the amendments. And these members of this committee, I would recommend that some of them be removed and changed.
The Honorable Kemosi, what is out of order?
Mr. Speaker, is the honorable member in order to say that this is a fake report? Given the fact that, Mr. Speaker, if you look at the report, Mr. Tandi himself agrees that he made a press statement, and he says that he visited the office, he contacted the media house to express the fact that he never said. Is he in order to say that this is a fake report, which we have sat as a committee and deliberated and presented to this House, Mr. Speaker?
The Honorable Atandi, I direct that you withdraw that statement that this is a fake report. This is a report of the House.
Mr. Speaker, I will not withdraw my statement because, Mr. Speaker, I was invited to this committee because I made a reaction to what the media already highlighted about corruption.
The Honorable Atandi withdraw
and
the
Mr. Speaker,
The Honorable Atandi, I have directed that you withdraw that part of your statement that this is a fake report. It's a fake report. It's not. You can disagree with the report, but you cannot say it is fake.
I'm sorry, I will not withdraw my statement.
No, let them, honorable members, allow Mr. Atandi. The Honorable Atandi, I heard you say you have withdrawn that part of fake.
Yeah, I'm not going to withdraw that.
He has withdrawn. Yes. Honorable Atandi, just to make it clear.
Yeah, I'm not going to withdraw.
Honorable, order. We'll have order, honorable members. The Honorable Atandi, just withdraw, please, for the sake of the record and the part that the report is fake. Just withdraw that.
Mr. Speaker, with the amendments by Honorable Pukose, the report is okay. With the amendments. It's not vague, is it? With the amendments, I've said, I've clarified.
The Honorable Atandi, if you listen to my directions, so that we can just make progress, and all of us. That
Mr.
part
Speaker.
where you're saying the report is fake, just say, I withdraw the part where, my statement where the...
Mr. Speaker, I'm saying that with the amendments by Dr. Pukose, the report is now credible and it's not fake.
It's quite a note. We'll make progress. Honorable members, we shall proceed. The Honorable Leader of Minority.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I also want to make my contribution to this report. Mr. Speaker, first, I think when these issues came up, it really brought down the image of this parliament. We must admit that fact. But Mr. Speaker, it takes me back to asking, really, as members of parliament, are we behaving honorably? You know, when a matter like casting aspersions on the character, conduct, integrity of other members, there is no law barring you from making those allegations, but they should be backed by concrete evidence that would stand the test of time. Mr. Speaker, I find it a bit careless that honorable members, especially in this parliament, just talk carelessly about the integrity of others, about the conduct of others, about credibility of other members. Mr. Speaker, we are in this house to debate. And this house, we should be allowed to debate freely so that we make decisions. And Mr. Speaker, there are so many reports. In fact, I've been here for a while. From 2008, I would tell you there are numerous reports of the House which have been defeated. But Mr. Speaker, this is the first time that I had so scandalous allegations and accusations against other members. And I thought that probably the members who are making these allegations had concrete evidence that if they appeared before Powers and Privileges Committee, we would slay this dragon, the dragon that has been with us for years, that this House, the members who take bribes. But Mr. Speaker, we must admit that it was a shame that the members who made these allegations, while appearing before the Powers and Privileges Committee, made what I would call, but because, Mr. Speaker, this is Parliament, I would say they made, they really made, no, I don't want to use the word a fool, Mr. Speaker. I was really trying to avoid it. But let me say that these members did do justice to themselves first. Because when you make allegation that a colleague member of Parliament has either given bribe or taken bribe, you must prove it. You must provide evidence. Otherwise, Mr. Speaker, we will be chasing rumors, propaganda, and it is hurting the image of Parliament.
The Honorable Mbadi, I'm sure the proper term that you are looking for, and it's good that the Honorable TJ has come in,
Yes.
would be spurious.
Yeah, disparaging.
Spurious allegation.
Well, disparaging, but I was looking for terminology on the character of these members who made the allegation. Mr. Speaker, personally I have issues with the members who made allegations. They are not helping this country. If you go make serious allegations that members have taken bribe to shoot down a report that was commissioned by this House, and then you fail to prove those allegations. Mr. Speaker, what are you telling the country? In my view, Mr. Speaker, and reading the report, you realize that all these members, none of them came with a concrete evidence. Some even withdrew the allegations after going to the media, Mr. Speaker. But, Mr. Speaker, look at it also this way. Are we supposed really to respond to media reports? I don't know where we lost this standing order, where media reports were not supposed even to be quoted in Parliament. Because, Mr. Speaker, there was this newspaper, although I don't like quoting it much, because it comes once a week and its credibility, I don't know. This Citizen Weekly lined up names of MPs, some of whom were not even in Parliament that day. So many of them. Then, later on this week, and that is the report that many media houses and vernacular stations, I listened to one vernacular radio station a lot, and they were mentioning those members. In fact, unfortunately, one member, one person whose name appeared in that list comes from our region. And they kept on hammering that member, despite the fact that that member, Mr. Speaker, just allow me 2 minutes, despite the fact that that member was not even present in the House that day. And that is the MP for Suna West. He was even absent. He was in the village, but he was mentioned in that media. Now, yesterday, I saw that same newspaper apologizing to members. And yet, the whole country has been scandalizing these members. Mr. Speaker, my last word, I expected this committee.
Allow the leader of majority 1 minute to wind up.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, thank you for allowing me just a minute. Mr. Speaker, I expected the Powers and Privileges Committee, and Honorable Mwadi, I think you can note this, that in a case where members make these serious allegations and they cannot substantiate, these members should be reprimanded in this House. We have integrity, we have our names. In fact, a politician eats his name or her name. They should not play with our names, Mr. Speaker. If you have evidence against me, mention it. But if you don't have, and you make wild allegations against Mbadi, please, you should be reprimanded and bear the consequences, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honorable Korere Poleta, member for Laikipia North.
Shukrani, Mheshimiwa Spika. Mimi nasimama kuchangia ripoti hii kama vile kuunga mkono na vile imerekebishwa na Mheshimiwa Pukose. Na Mheshimiwa Spika, ni vile wanenaji wengine wamesema, hata katika kitabu takatifu Biblia, Zaburi 22 mstari wake wa kwanza kuelekea chini, inasema kwamba jina nzuri ni afadhali kuliko fedha na dhahabu. Kwa hivyo Mheshimiwa Spika, ningetaka kusema wale wenzetu ambaye walilimbikizia lawama watu kwamba walikula rushwa, na kamati ya nyumba hii ikakaa chini ikafanya uchunguzi na wakatoa mapendekezo yao. Mheshimiwa Spika, pale nje majina ya wengi wetu imeharibika. Tumeonekana kama ni watu ambaye tulikuja hapa kula rushwa ya shilingi 10,000, shilingi 20,000. Mheshimiwa Spika, jinsi wengine wamesema, tungependa pia kuona wale wenzetu ambaye walitoa lawama hii, ambaye wamelalamika kwamba waliona hiki na kile, waende kwa idara ya ujasusi, waende kwa idara ya ufisadi, waende watoe ripoti zao kule, ili wawezwe kuchunguza, hata wao wenyewe wachunguzwe kwanza. Manake Mheshimiwa Spika, hatutaketi hapa baada ya kupitia magumu katika maisha ili kufika mahali ambapo tumefika, tuje tuchafuliwe majina na watu ambao wana maneno yao. Nimesoma taarifa ambayo imeletwa mbele zetu hapa, nikaona mmoja wa waheshimiwa ambaye ametajwa pale akisema kwamba mheshimiwa mwenzake alimlimbikizia lawama kwa sababu walishindana sijui kiti gani, sijui ni viti gani inashindanwa baada ya sisi kushinda wale tuliwashinda. Na sasa wamelete hiyo maneno yote na kutuharibia jina bunge mzima. Kwa hivyo mheshimiwa, ningeomba wabunge waheshimiwa wa nyumba hii, jina mheshimiwa inakuja na heshima zake. na wale ambao wameharibu heshima ile, basi wakutane na wale ambao wanafanya uchunguzi huo na wabebe mzigo wao wenyewe. Naunga mkono ripoti hiyo.
The Honorable Martin Owino, member for Ndiwa.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity. Mr. Speaker, the dignity of this House depends on what members say, how they say it, why they say it, and to whom they say it. I want to recommend the committee for this report. But from the beginning, I have a problem with their observation. They say that there might have been bribery of members, not even some, of members, and that is why they were inviting those guys to investigate 349 members. I think that is not correct. But as the minority leader has said, I want also to reiterate one thing. This House is being looked by the citizens of this country as the highest house for lawmaking. And we as members, we have the obligation to live to that expectation. Mr. Speaker, it's as if we are piercing our own feet with a spear and crying for help. Because I see, as they say, the witnesses came before the committee without any evidence. And these are the people who started allegations and spoke loudly to the media. I think at this level we need to have some audit of our own behaviors. So, Mr. Speaker, the committee ought to have recommended strongly for those who made allegations without evidence, they deserve reprimand. This committee has power, and I don't think it is right for them to kick or to be in a position of wanting to kick the can down the road when you have the power outlined in the standing orders very clearly what you should do. And if you have no evidence, you just conclude there's no evidence in this, because we are a separate institution from the executive. So when you roll your problem for the executive to take care of it, then you are opening a kind of worms, even to the whole institution. So I don't think that was a good move, and I thank the amendment by Honorable Pukosi for doing that. So, Mr. Speaker, I support this, and I just urge ourselves to live to the expectation of members who elected us to this August House. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Leader of Majority.
Mr. Speaker, first I want to thank the Committee on Powers and Privilege, chaired by the Speaker, for a good report. Mr. Speaker, if you look at Section 15, subsection 4A of the Parliamentary Powers and Privilege Act 2017, it mandates that committee to inquire into the conduct of members whose conduct is alleged to constitute a breach of privilege in terms of Section 16 of this Act. So this is the Act that regulates our behavior within the precinct of Parliament, including the chamber. Mr. Speaker, it is appalling that allegations were made by members, and the same members could not substantiate their allegations in front of the committee. It's very shameful. Mr. Speaker, you know there are people who feel by talking about their colleagues, they will become popular out there. Please, when you are in a funeral, when you are in a rally, when you are in your own constituency meeting, keep our names off your radar. Yeah, talk about your constituency. You know, I watched a member saying, I am ready to give every 349 members, if they queue in front of my house, 10,000. Who told you we want your 10,000? Yeah. And that member should give us a space. If you have money, that is your money. Some of us, maybe you don't have the money. But when you say, I am ready to give each member 10,000, and I want them to queue, what message are you sending? What are you sending? And Mr. Speaker, I think the previous committee let this be the first report. The next report, anybody who makes allegations and he cannot substantiate before the privileged committee, that person must be indicted. The Speaker should write to EACC and they should be investigated. Speaker, this culture, colleagues, this morning we need to want to look at this report with some sobriety. The first observation is incriminating all members of the House because it says on top of page 42. And that's why Honorable Pokose saved the whole House. Where are we coming from? And please, majority of those members are new members, majority. You are excited about what? You know, this excitement about the big question, talk shows, when you get hold of the microphone, please talk to us. Some of us who have lived here for long. The same people who you think they'll profile you will bring you down. And I think we must. And Honorable TJ knows. He served in the 11th Parliament. In the end, this report to the House, we hand ourselves over. You know that recommendation was handing over the 349 of us to the office of the DCI and the EACC. And today, the DCI can start an investigation, and 2022, you might not get clearance. It's as simple as that you're under investigation by EACC. And that's why the framers of the Constitution felt that Parliament must regulate itself. Must discipline itself. All the allegations that have been said were never proved. And in fact, you made the committee's work very difficult. Speaker, we watch this thing on TV. Why should a member of Parliament talk about what goes on in the washrooms of Parliament? Why? And this 11th, 12th Parliament, you have really degraded the statue of a member of Parliament. This report is a soul-searching report. Each one of you, the word honorable, is a lot of things. And please, Mr. Speaker, as I conclude, Mr. Speaker, members of Parliament, please, in your private meetings, in your meetings out there, don't bother. Let our names not be your denominator. Don't discuss us. If you want to take bribes, Parliament now is putting a comprehensive security CCTV camera. Anybody who takes bribes, we don't want to be part of that person. The person, if you are a member of Parliament, it's not your business to give out bribes to protect executive. Who are you protecting? We have the Public Accounts Committee report for 2015-2016. Come and discuss.
Leader, I'll allow you 1 minute. And remember that...
Come and discuss. Come and discuss the Public Accounts Committee report and see the way money has been lost. Come and discuss the Public Accounts, Public Investment report, the 21st report. This is where you are here to oversight. You are here to represent. You are here to legislate. You are not here to go and collect money on behalf of other people and come and bribe us. And please don't even, the Speaker, Honorable Member for Sabot, is one of the guys I have a lot of respect for. But he invited me to his house to take 10,000. No, please, invite me to take 2 million. What is 10,000? The member for Saboti was on TV. Yes, was saying all the 349 members with the Speaker, Mupange Laini, Mbele, nyumba yangu, nitawapatia 10,000. We don't care about whether you are rich or not. Next time, don't invite us. Invite us for Harambe. Invite us to open projects in your constituency. I beg to support.
Honorable members, I will now call on the mover to reply. Honorable members, order. Order, there is no need to carry up hands. Honorable members, you will recall that you made a resolution that this motion will be debated for only 1 hour. You have now done 55 minutes. There is only 5 minutes for the mover to reply. The mover proceed to reply.
I thank you. I thank you, Honorable Speaker. And there's no donation. and I want to thank honorable members for bringing out real issues regarding our conduct here in Parliament, how we should also behave when we are out there. And I quite agree with the leader of majority that there are some people who made this look like a joke. That while on one side, they were out there in the media talking about members, when they came to our committee, they reneged on every word which they had spoken out there, including members, those who we had video clips, evidence, which we played, and then they started playing around with words. And I think it's time for us to be serious when we are discussing matters of colleagues, matters of this House, because it really touches on our integrity, and it depends on how mostly out there is taken by members of the public, because they will always want to hit back at Parliament. But a good recommendation, which I picked from members, Honorable Speaker, is that for those, and subsequently moving forward, for those who give allegations, and then when they are bringing the evidence in the committee, they are not able to substantiate, we shall actually be using the provisions in the Parliamentary Powers and Privilege Act to be able to reprimand or give any other punishment that is given or provided by the Act. So, Honorable Speaker, with those many remarks, I beg to reply.
Honorable members, you should always remember the resolutions that you make in the House. The member for Wajir is, yes, that is proper. Allow me to put the question that this House adopts the report of the Committee of Powers and Privileges on the inquiry into allegations of bribery of some members of the National Assembly during consideration of the report of the joint sittings of the departmental committees on agriculture and livestock and trade, industry and cooperatives on the inquiry into alleged importation of illegal and contaminated sugar into the country, laid on the table of the House on Tuesday, November 20, 2018, subject to deletion of paragraph 7.2 on page 46, recommendations of the report, and substituting thereof the following new paragraph 7.2 recommendations that, in view of the foregoing, taking into account the contradictions and inconsistencies in the evidence of the witnesses who appeared before the Committee of Powers and Privileges, and the fact that the committee lacks capacity to conclusively investigate such matters which may border on criminality, the House notes that the honorable members who made claims of bribery against fellow members are at liberty to make formal reports to other relevant competent state investigative agencies to undertake investigations. Will as members of that opinion say aye? Aye. Will as members of a contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. Next business.
Order number 11, 22nd report on audited financial statements for state corporations.
Honorable members, debate on this had commenced, and the Honorable Njoroge Wamaua was on his feet and he had a balance of 3 minutes. The Honorable Njoroge Wamaua, not desiring to be present. He's here? Yes, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I had debated about this report, Mr. Speaker. I was only remaining to say, Mr. Speaker, that it is very good that we support the report of the committee as per the recommendations which were made out of the observation, Mr. Speaker, that had been made. Mr. Speaker, I support the report.
The Honorable Amin Kasim, Wajir East.
Thank you, Speaker, for giving me an opportunity to contribute and support this motion of moving the audited report of the state corporations of Kenya. When a Speaker, state corporations are state investments, and they are supposed to be guided by the Act so that they can be able to provide certain guidelines and certain purity in terms of their financial transactions. Investments which are meant for Kenyans and to support development initiatives in various entities should be done prudently in regards to the PFM Act and in following the state regulations in terms of financing these state corporations. But as we adjudicated on this committee, we have realized a number of flaws that have emerged in a number of state corporations. But nonetheless, in the 221 we have been able to transact on, we have realized certain flaws. The initial one was the usage of independent auditing firms. One thing we have realized, the Auditor General is mandated to provide certain auditing regulations and certain regulations which mans it. But one thing we have been able to observe, 7 of the state corporations out of the 21 have used independent auditing firms. And we have realized that the entire 7 are coming from the Ministry of Energy. Yet they have been given unqualified report. That means they had no flaws. But we have realized over the period of time.
Order member, what is it, honorable member for Udanyi? You seem to have pressed an intervention. He pressed and left. Very well. Please proceed.
That the idea of using independent audit firms and allowing them to continue and provide unqualified report is one thing we have realized, that yet there still continue to be a filtrage of financial regulations that they have been done. A number of them have been arranged in court, including the KPLC, for that matter, yet they had 5 years of unqualified reports. This is wanting, and this does not reflect the transactions that have been going on in a number of organizations. So we will suggest, and the recommendation of this committee is that all state corporations, particularly the key entities, should be done by the Auditor General instead of relegating the responsibility to others. One other observation we have also realized is that there's an abuse in terms of variations which have been done on various costs. It appears that most of the state corporations are not properly planning their projects properly well, and they're not given specific timeframes and the costings done. They seem to be doing projects without due considerations of the requirement in terms of planning, in terms of procurement plans, and in terms of costing. We have realized a number of state corporations have a variation of about 337%, or 300 and above the variation acceptable. The acceptable variation is 25%. But you wonder, when an entity conducts a project and has a variation of over 300%, that is a clear indication of misuse of public fund. A fund that was entitled and to be used effectively for discharge of its functions. That is the NHIF, the farm. We have also realized that in the NSF, NSF, a building that was initially costing, it was to conduct about 15 stories, went to 6 stories. And out of that, the financial aspect has never changed. That is an indication to suggest equally that there was no proper planning for that kind of a project. Most of the state corporations do not have the confirmed board, the board members. The chairman is not there. The number of boards have not been properly constituted. So it's a recommendation of this committee that all boards, before they undertake certain adjudication of their concern, they should be properly constituted. They should have the board, the chairman, and the various board committees so that they can have the adequate quorum for them to execute as required. But naturally, there are certain boards, particularly the NSSF, have realized that even the head of the department and the CEO have been acting for over 4 years. You wonder an institution that has the chief executive acting in that position for 4 years, and other directors are equally acting position, and there is no confirmed board to transact on that. That is crippling the organization that is there. So indeed, it's a recommendation of this committee that all boards should be properly constituted with substantive CEOs and various directors, and the board should be properly constituted within a period of 6 months, as suggested as a concern, as a recommendation. One other critical observation we have also realized, as we adjudicated on a number of these state corporations, is that state corporations are making investments, particularly in banks that are likely to collapse. Kenya Railways have invested about 800 million shillings in the collapsed Chase Bank. Within a period of 3-4 months thereafter, the bank has collapsed. That leads to a total loss of that amount of money. Similar investments have been done by NHIF and other state corporations. NSF equally does the same. So generally, there should be due diligence and proper investment being done by these state corporations before they go into short-term investments of their funding. The critical other issues we have also seen is that most of the state corporations engage in purchase of land as a way to invest. But most of this land which they invest are not properly observed, they are not properly vetted, they are not properly, the National Land Commission has not done its due diligence as required in terms of the ownership of the land, such that a number of the organizations we have realized, including the NSF, including the NHIF, and the Kenya National Library, they have bought land which have queries, and the ownership have not been seen. So that is a clear indication to suggest equally that this is a bad investment and they should be properly done within the limit. It appears there's a collusion between the sale of land and those who are likely to sell the land as well, and the buyer. So this collusion should cease, and when land is being bought by state agencies, it should conform within the laws and within the requirement of the Land Commission, and due diligence properly done. One critical observation we have equally seen is that most of the state corporations, particularly the Kenya Airport and the Kenya Airways, have certain land which is within, each one of them is claiming ownership. And up to date, despite written recommendations, they have never been, the National Land Commission has never been able to commit that land to a specific entity, whether it should go to Kenya Airways or whether it should go to Kenya. So these are issues that have been happening, and most of the state corporations seem to have similar problems. So I will suggest, as a member of parliament and a member of this committee, that the National Land Commission should move with the speed to resolve land issues between entities and the land issues between the buyer and the entities that have bought. These are issues that have been able to make this country lose a lot of money, which should have rather been used for effective discharge of their functions. Thank you very much.
Next, we shall have Honorable Manje, member for Kajiado North.
Thank you, Speaker, for giving me this chance to contribute to this particular motion. That is the 22nd report on audit and financial statement for the state corporations. And say this, while we create this corporation, it has particular objective. And I tend to think one of the objectives that a country should establish them is to try to open the country for development. And once that is done, the state corporation should either be made private or maybe the objective is changed. But the problem we have in the country, it is as if we don't realize why some of these state corporations were started. Another issue that should be considered when establishing this is maybe the security of the country, all those interests may be that the country has to make sure that it is strategic. For example, the state companies on security issues. These are the areas that should be done. But having said that, we should make sure that the money given to these state corporations is well guided, it is well accounted for, and it is well audited. Because the way it has been happening in our country, and maybe that's why some of these state corporations are not doing well, we have a tendency of repeating the same thing. A state corporation is given money, then within a short time, that money goes, and then we refund again. I tend to think this is not the correct way to go. It should be strategic. If it is not serving the purpose of the country, then it should be made private. Then, when it comes also to the number of state corporations, they ought to be guided by the specific objective that the country wants to achieve, instead of establishing state corporations right, left, and center. And also, I tend to think the government, as per se, has no business doing business directly. Some of these state corporations, when they turn to business, then the business should be left to business people who can easily manage these particular businesses. Because I tend to think how maybe the recruitment or the purpose of a state corporation is not more directed towards the profit, making profit, and that is the main rationale behind starting a company. Then we should also check the way some of the people are recruited in these state corporations. You will find that you go to a state company, you find when the manager is put there, he tries to put the colonies or maybe people from his own tribe, making sure that that corporation takes maybe the tribal lines, which is not very good for this particular country. I tend to think we should also check that particular point. The other issue that I think we should consider, the general point, is when it comes to implementation of these reports. Because I tend to think they are not properly implemented because we keep on having the same issues every time. In other jurisdictions like Uganda, where some of the police officers would sit in a public accounts committee to check where maybe the CEO of a particular agency held, it will be brought from that meeting to the police cells, and the due process of the law start. But in our case, we come up with a very good report, for example, that we recommend the anti-corruption to take over and maybe take the CEO in the correct procedure. But at the end of the day, this does not happen, and you find that we keep on allocating finances in the same area. So also in other countries, what they normally do, they attach the budgeting system to the accounting part. If you are CEO and you cannot account properly for the money given, you should not be given more money before you account the previous one. So I tend to think also this is what should be done. So in general, I think we should try to change. We should make sure that at least our state corporations are run smoothly. They are done prudently to compete with the private organization. I know there are some which are doing extremely well, but we should continue doing the same. I support the report.
Honorable Jessica Balu? Or not on this one? Give her the mic. Honorable Jessica, you may use the next one. The next one seems to be on.
Chair, let me go into record that I was present to contribute to the next.
Okay, very well.
But of course, I do support the PIC report with all the nothing of the observations, the findings, and recommendations. They are really quite in order.
Very well, very well. Honorable Bad, before I come to you, let me have Honorable Ruyai Amisi.
Honorable, yes, very well.
No, Mr. Speaker, this was a request for the earlier contribution.
Okay,
so
very well.
Just on the line.
Very well, very well, very well. In that case, before still I give you Honorable Badi, I want you to listen to one member speak on this one. Let me give Honorable Luku Kwenya.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity to speak on this report. It's our report because I belong to Public Investments Committee, and I must say it took us a lot of time to re-come up with this report, given the magnitude and the thoroughness that we had to accord to all these state corporations that are contained in this report. From the onset, I would want to say that we observed several things, and one that was cutting across is the issue of land. Most of these state corporations have chunks of land that they do not have title deeds. Many of them are in dispute, and we recommended that the National Land Commission just fast tracks the issuance of title deeds to these state corporations, because these chunks of land are at risk of ending up in the hands of people who have high appetite for public land. A case study is NHIF. They have a piece of land in Karen, whereby they actually wanted to do a resource center, to do a hospital, and to bring about development on that piece of land. But even after the designs and the drawings the architectural designs were done, it was difficult for the fund to really develop that land because it was in, or it's still in dispute. And it's quite a big chunk whose value is so high. And now we find that there are like 3 or 4 title deeds in different hands. The other issue is the issue of impropriety in terms of procurement. Case study, National Cereals and Produce Board. It's become the epicenter of all, it's a benchmark of corruption. Loss of funds. There was a case study of 40,000 metric tons of maize that were not delivered, but the vendor was supposed to be paid some, not less than $500 million shillings from the coffers of NCPB, and really it's become an issue. It's become an eyesore. It's become a shameful institution even to talk about, and therefore, from the recommendations that we have in this report, we hope that going forward, that one, any corporation that doesn't have or doesn't answer all the audit queries raised, their budgets should be freezed so that then they're incapacitated to do anything until they've cleared the air on all the issues that have been raised. On the issue of the energy sector, all the state corporations that are the energy sector, we found out that the Auditor General has been outsourcing for services of audit, and it's interesting that as much as these audit companies give a clean bill of health to these parastatals, later on we found out that some officers were being hoarded out of office with corruption charges, and they had clean bill of health. So really, we have recommended to the Auditor General to be carrying out the audits himself, as opposed to outsourcing. Case studies, Ketraco, REA, KPLC, Kengen, GDC, and stuff like that. So in conclusion, Mr. Speaker, if state corporations are well managed and run, they can even be a source of funds whereby they'll be channeling their surpluses to the exchequer and maybe ease the burden of tax on the Kenyan populace. And finally, Mr. Speaker, it doesn't matter how many good reports we're going to generate from our committees and adopt in this House. If they are not implemented, then it will be effort in futility. We have so many reports and motions that have been passed in this House which are never implemented. We are suggesting that from every watchdog committee, we have an implementation subcommittee that is going to work with the Committee on Implementation to make sure that all our reports that are generated and adopted in this house are implemented within record time, so that then we can get value for whatever it is that we're doing. With those few remarks, Mr. Speaker, I support the report, the 22nd report on PIC. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, Honorable John Buddy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I really wanted to make my contribution to this report of the PIC, and thank you for giving me the opportunity. Mr. Speaker, I want to start by thanking and congratulating this committee for working diligently and hard to bring this report to the House. At one point, I remember the House was a bit concerned that the PIC report and Public Accounts Committee report were taking long. And actually, I was asked as the leader of minority that the chairs from my side are not bringing reports. But I'm happy now we have very comprehensive reports. In fact, looking at the two reports, you can see the detail, the kind of attention that has been given to them. But since we are debating PIC now, I know Park will come a little later. I hope I'll get an opportunity to make my contribution to it. Let me confine myself to Public Investment Committee report. Mr. Speaker, I want to also mention, start by mentioning that I also I was a member of the PIC committee in the 10th Parliament. And we actually had a lot of issues with state corporations in terms of financial management, in terms of prudent financial management. And I'm happy that a number of issues have been highlighted, and more particularly, PIC has focused on the main or major state corporations or parastatals, the NSSF, the NHIF, the Kenya Power and Lighting Company, the Kenya Pipeline, among others. And I want to just urge PIC to continue working hard to update their reports so that all the parastatals are covered, even the small ones. Well, Mr. Speaker, looking at the reports, some things I've just noticed that from 10th Parliament to date, I think we are still fighting the same problems. The same problems of asset register, the problems of title deeds among many parastatals. I remember we were pressing on this parastatal to ensure that they have all the assets they have ownership titles. And that is still lacking. And you know that without a title, if you own a land without a title, you don't actually own it. So as I've seen NSSF, among other state corporations, are facing the same challenges that they were facing then. A lot of improvement have taken place in terms of managing the funds, especially managing members' contribution. I've looked at the report on NSSF, but still more needs to be done. But NHIF has caught national attention at the moment, and I expect PIC to zero in on that state corporation to just find out if really we are losing money or not, or these are just mere allegations. Mr. Speaker, I wanted to speak on one parastatal that I think is of concern to me, because a lot of staff who work in that parastatals have approached some of us with some information which are really disturbing, and that is Kenya Pipeline. I'm sure honorable members here will agree with me that Kenya Pipeline has been in the news for some time. And I just want to ask, I can see the Vice Chair, Honorable Ibrahim is here, who is the Vice Chair of PIC. I want to ask PIC, as a leader of minority, I want to request that committee to look at this parastatal very carefully, because the information that is coming through about that parastatals is disturbing. We need to find out between the management and the chairman of the board who is telling this country the truth. Because you see, this chairman, Mr. Ngumi, has been summoned to appear before the DCI to record statements on his role on the procurement of Kisumu Oil Jetty. And Mr. Speaker, That is a matter that probably the chairman is trying to divert attention from such a matter and bringing up other issues. I am concerned because when you look at those reports that are appearing, they are mostly appearing in one local daily and covered by one specific journalist. It's clear to me that that journalist is being used by somebody, and the information we are getting, Mr. Speaker, is disturbing. That probably it is the chairman who is sending this journalist to make this coverage to divert either attention from his investigation, because it is being investigated on that matter of Kisumu oil jetty, and to divert that attention to oil spillages, etc. I'm not saying that there could be no oil spillages. Probably there is. But as the chairman, he should also tell us his role on this investigation. You cannot have someone who is being investigated for corruption to be the one who is purporting to restructure that parastatal. I am aware that the managing director or the CEO of Pipeline, his term is coming to an end in March. That is Joe Sang. And so it's just about 4 or so months. And therefore, this could be a way of managing transition or trying to, trying to see how to manage the replacement of this MD. If it is true that the management is the problem, why then can't the board come up with clear policy guidelines to awaiting the changes that is likely to take place? But creating a perception at the moment, Mr. Speaker, through the media coverage, yet we know very well that there are so many audit queries that are facing the same chairman, more particularly, then it is one thing. Mr. Speaker, the information I have, which is given by those who are working in this parastatal, is that one, the board, the chairman, through the board, actually, on this Kisumu oil jetty contract, actually insisted on the implementation of that project, even when it was apparent that the Ugandan side were not ready. And the information is that the chair was using what he calls presidential directive, that the presidential directive to implement the project. Now that matter has become an issue. In fact, I can see the chair has walked in. Mr. Speaker, there are some people, some board members, some chairs of boards of parastatals, some members of, some CEOs of parastatals who in the past have even looted state corporations, disguising that they are fundraising for political parties' campaigns. And I think KPC, we need PIC to look at this KPC properly. Let us see between the management and the chairman of the board, and the board in its entirety, who is involved in corruption and who is involved in mismanagement of resources. When you see two groups fighting in the same organization, it is certainly not for the benefit of Kenyans. It is basically people fighting for their own interests. And Mr. Speaker, I wanted to speak to that I want PIC to look at the chair of the board and look at also the management of the board and of that corporation, Kenya Pipeline. Kenyans know pipeline is a very important and key parastatal. We cannot just allow it to be mismanaged or run down by a few individuals, and some claiming to be helping Kenyans, yet they're the same ones who are fighting, who are serving their own personal interests. Mr. Speaker, we saw when the Senate was looking at this matter and invited the chairman and invited the management, the kind of exchanges that we saw on TVs and was not one you'd expect from a serious state corporation. Mr. Speaker, having said that, I just want to urge that I first congratulate the Office of the Auditor General, because the Office of the Auditor General has managed to be up to speed in terms of auditing of not only government ministries and departments, but even the state corporations. We need to say kudos to them. If you have been here for a while, you would realize that in the past, we had cases or instances where accounts were even in arrears for 10 years without the auditor attending to them. At least now, it is the parliament that has the load of ensuring that we are up to date. But having said that, Mr. Speaker, I've been looking at these reports and looking at the auditor's queries. I think the Office of the Auditor General needs to change tact a bit. There are some queries that need not to find their way into our books at all. Queries about reconciliations, and then you realize that later, the same organization.
Very well. Yes, your time is over. I think the clerk should have alerted you. But your time is precisely over, Honorable John Paddy.
No, it's okay. If my time is over, Mr. Speaker, I thank you, and I will maybe make my contribution when we are debating the park report. Thank you, I support.
Very well, very well. Before I get to my right, let me give Honorable Edith Nyenze.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I stand to support the report on state corporations and say that state corporations, which is set with a mandate, and the state corporations should stick to their mandates. Actually, I support the report because it was based on a Financial Management Act, and congratulate the Auditor General for the good work. State corporations, actually, some of them have their act, so their operation should be based on the act, and after having the act and regulations, they should stick to them. Then from there, they're supposed to stick to their strategic plans, and also their procurement plans, which they should also come up with. And then they also undergo performance contracting. And with all this, we expect the state corporations to be run very, very well. But most of them are not run well. According to the report, there are some who have not appropriated the funds in the right way. So with these checks and balances from performance contracting, from adhering to the strategic plans, adhering to their procurement plans, we expect the state corporations to be run very well. But when you have these state corporations where the boards are not well constituted, where you have boards, state corporations which have remained without a chairman, without a CEO for years, you do not expect these state corporations to be well run. So the state corporations should be, according to this report, they recommended that they should have the boards constituted within 6 months. And I actually support this because without a proper constitution of the boards, you will not expect these state corporations to be run well. So I congratulate the committee for the good report. Then on the property of the state corporations, especially on land, I recommend that the National Land Commission should actually give title deeds to public institutions. And this also includes some which may not be state corporations, but we've noted that some of the schools have public land which has no title deeds. We also have some hospitals without title deeds. So I would recommend that the National Land Commission should move with speed to issue title deeds so that these institutions have the right documentations. Then on due diligence should be done. I know some state corporations which embarked with some banks, and they lost a lot of funds through the banks. Some and even invested pension funds through some of the banks, and the banks went down. So before investment is done and loss of public funds happens, the institutions, the state corporations should do due diligence before investing in such funds. Because imagine someone who has saved for years for their pension, and then the money is invested in these banks, and then the bank goes down. That means they lose all their savings. And this is very unfortunate. Therefore, I would urge the state corporations to invest, to do due diligence and invest well. So the other thing is on the mandate of the state corporations. I would urge there to also be some investigations and also some research to try to find out whether each state corporation is doing the mandate which it was, which is actually supposed to do. Because some of them, maybe the government is just putting a lot of money in these institutions, and then they are not doing their mandate the way they are supposed to do. With that, Honorable Speaker, I support the report and congratulate the Auditor General for the good work. Thank you.
Shall we have Honorable Joyce Chepkoech, member for Bomet? Honorable Joyce.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Let me congratulate the committee for the report that is in the floor of this House. And I want to say, Honorable Speaker, that this is one of the very, very crucial committees that deals with public investment in this country. And I want to say that the report that I've also tabled in this House is a report that is of great importance, not only to the Parliament, but to the Kenyans at large. Honorable Speaker, I beg to support. Thank you.
Honorable Rono Kipkogei. It's coming. It's not dead. It's coming. Yes, give him the mic.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Actually, I'm geared to contribute on the public accounts where I'm a member, but on the onset, I support the report of public investment, and more so, I want them to be more keen on the parastatals. The issues is a key element, because parastatals belong to government, and you wonder why they cannot actually obtain their titles. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I support.
Very well. The last person on my screen on this one is Honorable Onyango.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Before you, Honorable Onyango, yes, Honorable Pio, you seem to have.
I was just looking at reading the mood, and was tempted to invoke Standing Order 95-1, that the mover be called upon to reply. But since you've given Honorable Onyango Koyo, perhaps you could finish first.
Well, I've seen there is 2 other members who have since the last 1 minute.
Well, but there must be a closer, Madam the Speaker.
The mover be called to reply.
Yeah.
Now that Honorable Onyango was on the floor, please, Honorable Onyango.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for giving me the opportunity to contribute to this very noble bill. Mr. Speaker, I want to say that the Auditor General of this country is doing a very good job. That the essence of bringing the parastatals, kickstarting parastatals in this country, was to enable us create jobs and also generate some generate the economy which would go a long way in helping the country in raising the financial muscle that we needed. But unfortunately, because most of the political appointments are done through big political bigwigs in this country, there are a lot of parastatals have been run down, and areas that were targeted to raise money for the economy of this country, generate the economy of this money, have been run down thoroughly because of many and scrupulous parastatal heads. The auditor report always speaks loud to this, and reports are made. Unfortunately, it's regrettable that many people who have been cast out in bad light, people who have done more harm economically to this country, have been left to walk scot-free. And if anything, many of them have been considered for other appointments, even high-level appointments when their time comes. And this is very wrong. It's high time we want the government to walk their talk of zero tolerance on corruption, and to make sure that all those adversely mentioned by the Auditor General actions are taken. I remember very vividly that in the last parliament, one of the last auditor's report, there was a report about mismanagement by various county governments. And one of them I can remember because I come from Kisumu county government, is that some personalities sold land to Kisumu county government, land that the Auditor General found that was unnecessary and were much higher than the value. To date, I have not heard that those people have been reined in, and that efforts are being made to recover those kind of monies. And they're elsewhere. If you look at the parastatals, there are fights everywhere. And ironically, those who should be serving in jail are the people being considered for appointments and reappointments. So we want the government to walk their talk and ensure that those who have been cast in bad light, more so in terms of mismanaging various parastatals, and the advance reports that reflect pilferages of government money that we needed to finance various government programs, are brought to books, and that the state walks the talk on corruption. Otherwise, I want to take the opportunity to support. I support this report. Thank you very much.
Very well. You know, I'm very well. I mean, Honorable Pio had raised the issue of that the mover be called to reply, but Honorable Majority Leader, you really look like you really need to contribute on this one, and then I'll get really the mood of the House so that we make progress. Honorable Majority Leader. And I'll stick to that.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, thank you for that indulgence. Speaker, even last night we said in the House Business Committee that Public Investment Committee reports and Public Accounts Committee reports are serious reports. In fact, they form the core. 60% of the core mandate of the Assembly on oversight is in these reports. Yes, so, Mr. Speaker, we should not treat it like the bribery report. We should not treat it like it can only be at the same level with the gender rule principle this afternoon. It's a serious business. But I am sure I want to thank the chair of the Public Accounts Committee for bringing the 22nd annual report of the Public Investment Committee. And in doing this report, the committee looked at the public procurement and asset disposal. They have looked at the PFM Act. They have looked at the international public sector accounting standards. They have looked at the international financial reporting standards to come to this conclusion of this report. And on the one side, Mr. Speaker, we must highlight institutions, parastatals, that had no audit queries. Must be made very clear. Institutions like Kenya Power, institutions like the Center for Mathematics, Science and Technology in Africa, institutions like the Competition Authority of Kenya, Unclaimed Assets, Unclaimed Financial Asset Authority, institutions like the Nairobi Center for International Arbitration, the Privatization Commission, and the Kenya Copyright Board. These institutions had no audit queries for financial year 2014, 2015, up to 2016, 2017. But there are institutions that year in, year out, they have audit issues. Whether you change the CEO, whether you change the chairman of the board, they still have audit. Geothermal Development Company is one of them. Kenya Electricity Generation Company. You know, performance of a contracted project. For example, the one that comes from Lesos to Tororo and Nairobi Ring project. Cases, that is for Katrako, the cases are under arbitration for over 10 years. Government must put their house in order. They must come to a solution. You can't arbitrate, you know, in infinity. There must be timelines. If you look at a geothermal development company, there is the issue of unpaid corporation tax of 724 million GDC and corporation unclaimed corporation tax. Kenya School of Law, there's loss of land in Kilimani area intended for the principal's residence. A whole principal's residence in Kilimani, the land is missing. And Mr. Speaker, the implementation committee, the DCI, this is, in fact, the DCI, the EACC, and the DPP need to pick this report the moment the House approves it. Don't look for people through SMS. Get Parliament report. Look at the Kenya School of Law, I've seen it. Look at the National AIDS Control Council. Advances to constituency AIDS coordinating committees. All that are missing. And Mr. Speaker, you know, corruption, we must fight it. We either fight corruption, all of us together, or you tell us you are massaging. This report of public investment, if you read it, and I'm sure if you look at the public accounts, is the same. Damning allegations, damning fraud, serious corruption has taken place, where people, as we speak, are in office and they can't account for the resources that they were given on behalf of the people of Kenya. I looked at the NSSF on the Hazina. You know, the Chinese company, I think, asked for billions. But I'm happy the committee have decided that the only amount that can be paid is the one that is based on the valuation of the public works. Hazina Plaza in Mombasa, the leasing and the renovation issues. A number of issues have been raised. The irregular disposal of undeveloped land in Mavoko. The title is superimposed bearing the name of Messrs. Kasim Ramji. How does NSSF land be owned by another Indian? I mean, you know, the public investment reports are serious reports. The DCI must go and pick these people and ask them what is going on. The stalled projects of Hazina Trade Center, Nyayo Estate, and Bakassi. If you go to, for example, Kenya Railways, something very interesting is happening in Kenya Railways. Illegal allocation of land to private parties in 3 acres in Limuru, 0.7 acres in Mombasa. Because you know, even Radisson Blue is on Kenya Railway. And that's why people, when they talk about Western, I wonder. Nearly all the hotels in Nairobi, 5-star hotels, are built on government land. So why do you flag out only Western? Why not? Crown Plaza is on Kenya Railway land. Radisson is on Kenya Railway's land. Serena used to belong to some other people, I'm told, when I was very young. This Intercontinental, I'm sure it is maybe hived from Uhuru Highway. So, let us not be selective. Why are you after Western? If you talk about Western, get hold of the history of Radisson Blue. You know, you know, Madam Honorable Tobiko, you know, you are a pastoralist and I'm your patron. And when your patron is speaking, you don't interrupt. So look at the Kenya National Library Service. All of us know that building has been going on since I was a member of parliament, since 2007. Why is Kenya National Library Service headquarters not is not getting complete. Jomo Kenyatta Foundation. So the chair has done, and the committee has done a wonderful job. What happens when a committee produces such a report, Mr. Speaker? When a committee produces such a report, its recommendation are geared towards other investigative agencies. Parliament does not have the capacity and the technical know-how to investigate and bring these people to book. Let this report, Mr. Speaker, once we pass, let it not be in the shelves and be a victim of dust. Let the implementation committee and the clerk's office write to the DCI. You know, it's not about the few allegations. I gave somebody 10,000. I gave another lady 15,000 in the toilet. The doors of the toilet were open. That's how I heard the story. That is irrelevant. You know, the problem in our country, we deal with petty crime. We are dealing with the petty crime, you know. We are dealing with the borders. In this report, the whole, maybe 10, 15, 20% of the budget of the Republic of Kenya has been stolen. And Mr. Speaker, I want to challenge honorable, leaders of NASA on the other side. Despite the handshake, which is good for Kenya, it has brought stability, you must play your oversight role. You must play. Despite the handshake, if you are the chair of Public House Committee, if you are the chair of Public Investment Committee, whether we drink tea, please, and your committees, you must protect public resources. The watchdog committees, these two watchdog committees are one of the committees that in every parliament across the world, they are respected. You know, you should not be like the Public Investment Committee of the Senate. You know, we know what goes on there. Governors come. Yeah, governors, they come. Governors, they are clean. It has become a cleaning chamber. But if you look at this report of Honorable Nasir, and even the Honorable Wandai's report, these are serious reports. So please, those of you who are given the opportunity to be in the opposition, yes, you have been given an opportunity by the people of Kenya to sit on opposition benches. Do not let down the Kenyan taxpayers. Those of us who are in Jubilee, we will support the president in the war against corruption. So all of us together, both sides, let us make sure that those who are responsible in playing around and putting in their pocket resources meant for the citizens of this country, they must be held accountable. With those many remarks, Mr. Speaker, parliamentary committees, this is an advice. I think we also gave it in the House Business. Because of the voluminous work of these two committees, we will ask, and other committees, we will ask parliamentary committees to form subcommittees that will work closely with the Committee of Implementation to track and report to the committee on the status of implementation of their recommendation. Why am I saying this? Honorable Nasir, do not, after it's approved, follow it up. Form a small subcommittee that will work with the implementation committee to make sure that these men and women who are indicted must be brought to book. Thirdly, institutions that their audited accounts are above board, they have complied with the law, must also be recognized. But Parliament must write a letter to them, to give them, that can help them in their performance appraisal, to motivate them. But I am sure, Mr. Speaker, anybody who reads the 22nd report of the Public Investment Committee, chaired by the member for, his father was, with a lot of, if you give me 1 minute, his father was Kanu Hauk, the late Sharif Nasir. May his soul rest in peace. So I'm sure where he is, he never thought his son will be an opposition and a chair of the Public Investment Committee. This is how roles change. His father was a serious Kanu minister. You play around with Mzee Moi, you face the consequences. But 10, 15 years down the line, his able son is now the chair of Public Investment Committee, and I'm sure him and his committee are doing a very good job. I'm sure the House will agree with you, but then we agree that the men and women who, some of them have unpresented checks, some of them have irregular procurement. You know, look at this NCBD, Natural Cereals and Produce Board. In 2015-2016, they did an irregular procurement of 40,000 metric tons of maize at Kenya shillings 552 million that was never executed. They have huge liabilities, millions and billions. An institution like that, Parliament has indicted. You know, you cannot allow such an institution to go and solve the problem of maize farmers in Kenya. With those many remarks, Mr. Speaker, I beg to support.
Honourable members, really, I must seek the mood of the House in light of what Honourable Pio had raised on a point of order that the mover be called to reply. And I want to establish the mood of the House. And I'll put the question that the mover be called to reply. Will as many as are of that opinion say aye? Aye. Will as many as are of the contrary opinion say nay? Nay. The ayes have it. Mover, Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this indeed is a very, very proud moment. I'd like to, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to reply on the same. And Mr. Speaker, I will be taking a few minutes, but with your indulgence and as per the rules of the standing orders, I'd like to donate some minutes to both my...
Order, Honourable Chairperson, on this circumstance, you may not, because you cannot. The circumstances under which you are called to reply.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. It would have been indeed an honor for my whip to be able to contribute on the same. And as per the standing order, the Speaker is always right. So we are hoping that with the few minutes that will be remaining, you will indulge on the same. But meanwhile, Mr. Speaker, I want to note that this is a very, very proud moment, not just for myself, but for the entire committee. And I want to applaud the effort of the committee members, and I'm seeing a number of them in this House. Nothing would have given me more joy and an honor to be able to chair such an incredible and very, very committed members of Parliament, Mr. Speaker, including our clerks and the resource team that Parliament has disposed to this committee. I'd like, Mr. Speaker, to maybe, because the committee, we feel that there is a need for us to be going at par with what is currently happening in most of the state corporations, and we don't want to be used as a rubber stamp in any of this. And that is the reason why currently, when we have an issue like the Kenya Power and Lighting, which had been given a clean bill of health, what this committee has opted to do, that after seeing what has been happening, there is going to be a special audit on the transformers and also the issue of the tokens, issues to do with, as the leader of majority has rightfully put it, the KETRACO and the geothermal and the rest. What we are now asking the Office of the Auditor General to do is to come up with a proper cost-benefit analysis, and that is to say that what is the financial implications of these delays. Over and above saying that you're going to pay a certain percentage on top, we're now asking that what were the repercussions? That means if there is no power line that has been built, and on this other side, there is power that is being generated and is being lost, what are the total financial implications on that, and who is going to be liable for that? We do not want just to be told that since a project has been finished, let us just close our eyes and it is gone. We cannot be able to allow Kenya to move in that direction, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the issue of the National Hospital Insurance Fund, which is, to say the least, sickening. It is truly sickening that the lives of Kenyans and such magnitude, you know, the thought and the brainchild that was brought up that we need universal health care, and the billions that are being given to an institution that like NHIF, if people are not going to be held accountable, if people are not going to go to jail, and if people are not going to go to jail to limitations of maximum levels, then really there is no need for us to be able to sit here and to be able to debate. There's no need for us to be able to stand in front of Kenyans and saying that we are playing our constitutional right. And that is the reason why the committee is now looking at working hand in hand with investigative bodies, and we want to now see what were the issues that had been raised and add more meat into the skeletons of all these things that have been happening. One of them is the issue of the government insurance that was being done, what exactly transpired, what is currently going on with these fake payments that are there. Mr. Speaker, Kenya Revenue Authority, there's the issue of the EGMS stamps, which is, to say the least, it is something that is affecting every single Kenyan, because you can imagine every single bottle of water being consumed, every single excisable item except motor vehicles is being affected by this. And this committee is currently going through the EGMS, and I want to thank whistleblowers out there. There are a lot of Kenyans out there, and I want to thank and appreciate the kind of respect and responsiveness that they saw in this very committee, where they came and they've been able to give us a lot of information. One of them was the issue that there could be at least 1,000 containers that have been unaccounted for, that were meant to have left the port of Mombasa, destined for other countries. They never reached there. So there has been an issue as to what happened and where these containers were. And when we asked the Office of the Auditor General to look into it, Mr. Speaker, we ended up seeing that it is not even 1,000. The Auditor General actually confirmed that these figures could reach 4,000 containers. So that is another one that is upcoming. The issue of Hazina Towers, where had it not been for this committee, today 6.8 billion shillings would be paid, because there was a contractor on site, they were paying. Had this committee not intervened at the right moment, today this country would have ended up paying an extra 6 billion shillings. 6 billion shillings. So we are now saying that we need to confirm, you know, despite the fact that there was a court case, but what caused that court case? Who was at fault? People need to be held accountable. The issue of Nyayo Estate as well, where people ended up signing up contracts without seeking authority from the Nairobi City Council, and the Nairobi City Council just decided we don't want to do anything to do with this. Then, as my leader, Honorable Mbadi, has rightfully put it, Kenya Pipeline, where there's the issue of the Line 5. Just yesterday, we were seated and we were going through the audit report and we were getting into the details. And I just want to give a glimpse of what is going to transpire, the level. And you know, sometimes, and not sometimes, I actually say this, that future generations will use this statement as a past tense. But the level of conniving and scheming that is being done by some individuals in this country, actually to steal, literally lives, and I'm saying this without any remorse, Mr. Speaker, that even the devil himself would take a seat and clap at the ingenuity of some people in this country just for the sake of stealing for their own self-interest, Mr. Speaker. So I want to thank, and the issue of following up on our recommendations. We have recommended, and I'm hoping that, and I want to congratulate my brother, Honorable Wandai, who is about as well to move his own report, that our recommendation is that every single one of us as oversight committees should have a subcommittee that will work hand in hand with the implementation committee, We do not want to take over the role of implementation, but we want institutional memory to be there so that our members can be able to liaise, and so that we do not have issues coming back and forth into our reports on an annual basis. And before I conclude, Mr. Speaker, the late leader of majority, the leader of majority mentioned my late father. My apologies. This is a bit emotional, so my English has been jumbled. But yesterday marks the 13th year since he departed and he left us. And I'm truly hoping that wherever he is, he's looking at us, all of us collectively, and he's saying that I have proud sons and daughters in this very National Assembly. Mr. Speaker, before I sit, I would indulge that the question, not to be put right now for obvious reasons, but to be postponed at the next sitting. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable members who paid putting the question on that particular order. Before we get to the next, what is it, Honourable Junet Sheikh? What is it? Or is it it's a registering interest to speak in the next, but using the intervention route? That's fine. That is noted. Before we get to the next order, the Speaker had earlier given permission for us at some point to revisit order number 5 on papers, because the Chair of Finance, Honourable Limo, had certain papers to lay. I will take liberty to give him this chance to lay the papers, and then we can go to the order papers, to the orders they appear in the order paper. The next item as they appear in the order paper. Honourable Limo, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Honourable Speaker, I beg to lay the following papers on the table of the House today, Wednesday, November 28, 2018. Reports of the Departmental Committee on Finance and National Planning on its consideration of the following reports. 1, the Insurance Amendment Bill 2018, and 2, the Government Contracts Bill 2018. Thank you, Honourable Speaker.
That is noted. Next order.
Order number 12, motion. Report on the examination of the Auditor General's report on the financial statements for the national government.
Chairperson, Public Accounts Committee, Honourable Opio.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I wish to move that this House adopts the report of the Public Accounts Committee on the examination of the financial statements for the national government for the financial year ended 30th June 2015, laid on the table of the House on Tuesday, November 14, 2018. Mr. Speaker, from the outset, let me say that my committee is extremely grateful to the Office of the Speaker and the Office of the Clerk for the support that the committee received throughout the process of collecting evidence and writing this report. Their invaluable support has made this possible. Mr. Speaker, it is also worth noting that the Public Accounts Committee report that I'm moving its adoption today is not just any other report, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, if you look at Article 203, Sub-Article 3 of the Constitution, it's very clear that this report, once adopted by the House, forms the basis, the very basis, for the allocation of the national revenue to the two levels of government. It forms a basis for the sharing of the national revenues between the two levels of government. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, this is a very important moment in this House. Mr. Speaker, the Public Accounts Committee report that I'm moving today covers nearly all ministries, state departments, commissions, and independent offices. And this report is about the financial year 2014-2015. As I do this, it's also important to note that my committee is committed to presenting before this House the subsequent report that will cover the financial year 2015-16, God willing, come February 2019. But coming back to this report, Mr. Speaker, there are certain points that I wish to reiterate. And this is from the experience that the committee has gone through throughout the time that it went through the evidence that was laid before it and the time it was doing the report itself. Mr. Speaker, there is a big issue. It's a big issue of budget absorption. Year in, year out, this House appropriates funds for development and recurrent purposes, recurrent expenditure purposes in the various ministries, state departments, commissions, and independent offices. The Speaker, these agencies invariably do not absorb these funds to the fullest extent. And this has got a very big impact on the completion of projects, Mr. Speaker. As we speak, we have got a number of projects throughout the country that are yet to be completed on account of the fact that the funds that were appropriated by this House were not released by the National Treasury. So the second issue, Mr. Speaker, therefore, is the issue of exchequer releases, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the agencies and ministries and state departments face the problem of either delayed exchequer releases or complete failure to release the exchequers. And therefore, it makes a joke of this House or work on in terms of passing the budget and appropriating funds to these departments and agencies. So something needs to be done. Because if for sure, given the country's capacity to collect revenues, we are not able to support projects, then it should be made clear from the outset at the time of budget making. Rather than lumping monies onto ministries in theory, and yet in practice that money is not there. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, and this is actually the core of the issue now. If you look at this report, Mr. Speaker, and I want to urge my colleague members to take time and read this report. This report has got more than 650 pages. And it details a lot of issues to do with how public money is managed once it has been released to these agencies and departments and ministries of the government of Kenya. Mr. Speaker, it will be important that members take time to read this report for them to be able to contribute from a point of knowledge. Mr. Speaker, what comes out clearly, and this cuts across, it's a running thread, throughout this report is the wanton misuse, we may call it wastage, of public funds. We may call it corruption, and indeed it is outright theft. It is plain theft, which you find in most of these departments, commissions, ministries, and independent offices. And Mr. Speaker, some of this misuse of public funds, some of this wastage of public funds, some of this corruption or theft stems from the fact that this House is sometimes so quick to pass supplementary budget estimates without proper scrutiny. One of the avenues through which public funds are being siphoned out is the practice of bringing in supplementary estimates late in the day and hurriedly passing it, thereby giving these people an opportunity to misuse public funds. Mr. Speaker, one of the other biggest problems is the issue of pending bills. And if you look at critically the issues raised in this report concerning the matter of pending bills, you will find that pending bills has also become a very good avenue. And how? You know, once a ministry or a department or a commission accumulates pending bills, and this is done specifically towards the end of the financial year, immediately the financial year comes to an end, these pending bills are rolled over to the next financial year. And because they are treated in many cases, in fact in most cases, as the first charge, you will find that these pending bills are settled without giving ample time or room to scrutinize them. And therefore, if there were malpractices, if there were irregularities in the manner in which these pending bills were incurred, you will find that you will have no opportunity to stop the settlement. So this is a very big issue that needs to be addressed by this House. Mr. Speaker, what I have called corruption, which is actually theft, if you look at this report, you will find that it is clearly evident that those departments, or ministries, or commissions that engage in mega procurement projects have a corresponding level of wastage of public funds. So procurement is a very, very proper avenue for entrenching corruption. Mr. Speaker, one of the methods through which you find money is being siphoned out, stolen really, through procurement is in the manipulation of quotations. And I want to explain. Mr. Speaker. And I'll use an example. Mr. Speaker, if you take the example of the National Police Service and National Prison Service Comprehensive Group Life Insurance Scheme, if you look at the procurement of that particular insurance policy, the Comprehensive Group Life Insurance Scheme for the police and the prison services, you will be shocked. So, Speaker, here is a case where, in the first place, the tendering was restricted. And you wonder, why would the tender for the supply or the provision of a basic service like such as insurance be restricted? So that is the first instance. The tendering process was restricted. and clearly against the law. Because if you look at the Public Procurement and Asset Disposal Act, even the one of 2005, before it was amended in 2015, there are very clear guidelines as to when you can resort to either restricted tendering or direct procurement. And this was clearly violated. Now you find, after restricting the tendering process, even for those companies that were selected to participate in this tendering process, the lowest bid, which was from a company, a very known company, British American Assurance Company, Britam bid for this service or for this contract at a cost of about 650 million shillings. Now what happened is that this contract was eventually awarded to a company, I think it is called Pioneer something, to a company, Pioneer Assurance, to a company whose bid was a whopping 1.7 billion shillings. And what is the reason being given? If you look at the report, the reason being advanced, for disqualifying the lowest evaluated bidder, Mr. Speaker, is that the form of tender was not duly completed, and that the format of the form of tender had been violated by not stating the capacity of the signatory. The second one is that the bid document required that the person signing the form of tender indicates his or her capacity in the organization. Now, Mr. Speaker, if you look at Section 64, subsection 2B of the Public Procurement and Asset Disposal Act 2005, that was applicable then, it allows for corrections of errors of oversights that do not affect the substance of the tender. Now, this lowest bid was being disqualified on technicality, and yet the law itself clearly provides that it should not be a basis for disqualification if it does not affect the substance of the tender. Mr. Speaker, when we interrogated this matter, we were being told that, Britam, which was the lowest bidder, had issues with their documents. We asked them that why did you make an effort to go to them and ask them to make the corrections? No answer was forthcoming. But even more importantly, we were told that perhaps the reason why they were not ready or not in a hurry to make the corrections is perhaps because they had underquoted. Mr. Speaker, how can Britam underquote or fail to understand the scope of the work they were quoting for, or they were bidding for, of all the companies in the insurance sector in this country? So it tells you that there was a clear determination to ensure that this particular contract was awarded to a company with the highest possible bid, highest possible quote, and for obvious reasons. Mr. Speaker, you can go on and on, and you will see that this wanton theft of public funds was not just limited or restricted to the police or prisons insurance cover scheme. It was all over. And we have highlighted, we have documented in this report graphically all these instances where public funds were misappropriated by officers, some of whom are still serving in public service, Mr. Speaker. And we have named them. Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, what is critical as I conclude this submission, is that this House must find a way forward. Mr. Speaker, the Auditor General has done his bit, and he continues to do it. Year in, year out, he's documenting these cases of wanton theft of public funds. The Public Accounts Committee has also done its bit, Mr. Speaker, by going through this evidence, by examining it, and by compiling this report, Mr. Speaker. And we have made specific recommendations in specific instances and against specific officers. Mr. Speaker, my prayer is that once the House, in its wisdom, adopts this report, that the agencies that we have recommended to take up these investigations would move with speed, Mr. Speaker, would move with speed and expeditiously deal with these matters so that we can bring them to a close. Mr. Speaker, finally, and this is very important, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in 2015, His Excellency the President, Uhuru Kenyatta, when he came here, I think it was during one of those State of the Nation addresses. Mr. Speaker, on that particular occasion, Mr. Speaker, the President read to the House, the full House, a list of cases that were under active investigation by the EACC then. The Speaker, he tabled before the House a list of cases and names of officers who were being investigated. And he directed that those officers should step aside until the investigations are completed. And indeed, a number of officers stepped aside. Some of them were eventually allowed to come back once the investigations did not find them culpable. A number of them did not come back. Mr. Speaker, in order for this House to support the President in the fight against corruption, because we must commend the President for his resolve to deal with this monster called corruption. Yes. In order for this House to assist His Excellency the President in slaying this dragon of corruption, this House, in approving this report, should make it clear that any person who has been adversely mentioned in this report and who has been recommended for further investigations by either the DCI or the EACC should do the most logical thing. Step aside and give room for these investigations to be completed. Because if they continue in the offices, it will be very difficult for these investigations to head anywhere, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, with those very many remarks, I wish to move and ask my very able deputy and vice chairperson of the committee, the Honorable Jessica Mbalu, to second. Thank you.
Very well. Who is Honorable Chair? What did you say? Who is replying? Seconding? Sorry. Yes, Honorable Jessica Baru, please.
Yes.
You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving this opportunity. Mr. Speaker, I rise to second the report on the examination of the Auditor's General reports on the financial statements for the national government. This is a report by the Public Accounts Committee. Mr. Speaker, I must start by thanking and congratulating the chairperson, very able chairperson, Honorable Opio, who has led us very well with our team, with the members. Mr. Speaker, I join the members in congratulating them, who are members who have sat and done a very good work, Mr. Speaker, which is being seen by these voluminous, and the public should see the kind of a document that the Public Accounts Committee report came up with, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the committee wishes also to thank and reiterate what the chair did say, to thank the Office of the Speaker, the Office of the Clerk, the Office of the Director of Committees, and the staff for the assistance, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, what the House should know and notice that we had over 76 sittings, and we burned the midnight oil, Mr. Speaker, to be able to complete this report, the 2015. And I must also state and inform the House that for the 2016 financial year, we are about 75%. And as the Chair did say, very soon we will be reporting to the House on the reports on the financial year 2015-2016. Mr. Speaker, this report, as it has been moved, will benefit the country. As we will be able to use the same report to disburse money to the counties, Mr. Speaker, on the basis of Article 203 of the Constitution that uses the latest approved revenues as the basis of allocating funds to the counties, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, and I'm sure also the relevant MDS will also be required to read it and see what they must improve in the coming years, Mr. Speaker. I must congratulate the Office of the Auditor General, Mr. Speaker. They must receive very special mention on we rely purely on the reports by the Auditor General, the queries that have been raised by the Auditor General and the Public Accounts Committee. We serve, after we take the evidence from the accounting officers to confirm the comments of the Auditor General's annual report, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the committee also reports on the major irregularities that we established, and we make recommendations on necessary corrective action, Mr. Speaker. Very important is to note that the PSC, on several occasions, Mr. Speaker, we have come across very mischievous accounting officers, Mr. Speaker, who sometimes do not appear before the committee as we indicate or we summon them on time. They give us excuses, Mr. Speaker, and also others come unprepared, Mr. Speaker. So I'm sure in future we have made recommendations on these accounting officers on how to contact themselves when summoned by the Public Accounts Committee, and not just the Public Accounts Committee, but other committees, Mr. Speaker. And this is pursuant to the National Assembly Section 27, Parliamentary Powers and Privileges Act number 29 of 2017, Mr. Speaker, that we really can make a statement on them. Mr. Speaker, the Public Accounts Committee examines financial events that have already happened, Mr. Speaker, and it may not be of much use because we detect crimes after they have happened. I do urge the departmental committees to tighten their oversight screws on the implementation of program-based budgets and to call, for what we call the suo motu investigation, Mr. Speaker, whenever a wave of corruption is detected. We must stop corruption before it happens, Mr. Speaker. The recommendations from of the House are not implemented, also that's an observation, are not implemented on organized systemic manner, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the CS Treasury and other accounting officers should be compelled to give terms of fraud. However, the ESCC and DCI take long. They don't take these, cases. They just swoop into probe after, after such our recommendations. How I wish this time round such investigating agencies would be on the forefront, Mr. Speaker, to take this report as a very ancient report and work on it so that we don't just kill, the good work of the Public Accounts Committee, Public Investment Committee, and other oversight committees, Mr. Speaker. If you are aware that the NY scandal was first unearthed by PSC, and such reports by the Public Accounts Committee, I do have the pleasure to have served in the last Public Accounts Committee. Such recommendations, we can see now them being used now. Mr. Speaker, as I move to the findings, Mr. Speaker, most of the findings, as the chair did reiterate, is that we have issues that rose from the audit queries, Mr. Speaker, and most of the issues, audit queries, they cut across each ministry, each department, and sometimes we are asking ourselves, is it through, a commission or a mission that they want to you know, don't, like, for example, when we talk about gross under expenditure, when we talk about pending bills, when we talk about outstanding impress, we are aware that in such ministries we have qualified staff. Yet, from one ministry to the other, we find such small mistakes that can be done, accounting procedures, that can be done by a small entity, just been found in such ministries, Mr. Speaker. The issues, I maybe go one by one because the chair did say them. We have found the issues about the gross under expenditure, which was around 192.6 billion. The accounting officers has attributed this budget under expenditure mainly to inadequate or delays in the exchequer issues, delayed disbursement of donor funds, persistent systematic challenges with the integrated financial management information systems, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, issues of outstanding impress are also they were very common in most of the ministries and departments. And for this budget of the financial year ending 30th June 2015, Mr. Speaker, I must pronounce myself that the outstanding impress was totaled to around Kenya shillings 117.55 million shillings, Mr. Speaker, which ought to have been recovered or accounted for on or before the 30th June of 2015. And these ones were not recovered. Mr. Speaker, the issue of the pending bills, the committee observed that during the year that was ending 30th June 2015, a number of ministries and departments did not settle bills amounting to around 42,202,100,000. That's a great big figure for, public funds, Mr. Speaker. Issues of statement on outstanding public debt, that has been stated very well by my very able chair. Issues of maintenance of accounting records. Speaker, the committee noted that maintenance of accounting records include cash books and bank accounts across a number of ministries and state departments during the year under review were not kept, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, so other issues were challenges integrated financial management information system, the IFMIS. This is a giant in the House, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, some of the issues, procurement and all the issues of funds were being attributed to IFMIS challenges, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the report is voluminous and the members should read it through. We came up with recommendations, and I wish the relevant bodies, the DCI, the ERCC, should take this matter serious, Mr. Speaker. The accounting officer, number one, the accounting officer, National Treasury, in the Commissioner General must make demonstrate efforts of collecting and accounting for tax revenues, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, other recommendation that committee came up with is that the accounting officers must at all times ensure that documentation relating to financial statements are submitted to the Auditor General pursuant to the provisions of Section 68(2)(1) of the Public Finance Management Act 20.
Honorable Jessica, you second.
Yes, just 1 minute to
Don't
second.
you?
Mr. Speaker, with all the resolutions and findings and recommendations in the voluminous book, this is the report which I call the members to read. I do second, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Very well. Honorable members, I propose a question that this House adopts the report of the Public Accounts Committee. Order, member. Honorable Baya. You must freeze. Members, I'll take that again. Honorable members, I will propose a question that this House adopts the report of the Public Accounts Committee on the examination of the financial statements for the national government for the financial year ended 30th June 2015, laid on the table of the House on Tuesday, November 14th, 2018. Honorable members, we have several notices for members who have registered amendments for this, and I'll get 1 or 2 members and then I'll give them a chance so that then the House has another opportunity to discuss and debate the amendment. But before I give the first member who has an amendment, let me have the one on top of my screen. Member for Oljorolok.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to contribute to this report. And Mr. Speaker, I feel proud to be part of the team that prepared this report. And I would like to thank our chair and also the committee members, and not forgetting our clerks who burnt the midnight oil to ensure that this report is ready. Mr. Speaker, as the majority leader said previously, park and pick are part of the most important committees in this National Assembly, and these committees needs to be taken seriously in terms of even budget allocations to ensure that we do our work properly. Mr. Speaker, as we were preparing this report, we experienced various challenges, which probably contributed to maybe the delay in tabling the report. We had issues of accounting officer not appearing on the scheduled days, and we had issues where even when they appear, they would delay in providing the necessary supportive document as required. Having said that, Mr. Speaker, we managed to prepare this report, and as members will see once they go through, there are some serious issues, serious economic crimes that have been committed by some departments. Mr. Speaker, just to mention a few, as a committee, we realize that the issue of paid-in bill is a serious issue that is cutting across all departments. Some are genuine, others are being misused by the accounting officers. And almost 90% of the departments have an issue of paid-in bills. Mr. Speaker, and one of the issue that needs to be looked at on paid-in bills is the issue of legal fees. That needs to be looked at. You find that in some cases, the AG engages the legal services directly, probably without involving the relevant departments. And in some cases, you find that some cases are just handled casually, and you find that the government ends up losing. We get sometimes unnecessary huge awards against the government. You find sometimes unnecessary huge legal fees which are not unpaid. The other issue, Mr. Speaker, that probably we need to look at is the issue of IFMIS. And almost all accounting officers have issues with IFMIS. And it's time we need to look as a house whether IFMIS is serving the purpose that it was supposed to serve. And probably one of the recommendations that we've made as a committee is to ensure the Treasury conducts an independent audit to establish whether IFMIS is serving its purpose. The other issue probably I would like to pinpoint, Mr. Speaker, is the issue of project management. Mr. Speaker, as we were doing our field study, we found that in some instances, some projects, especially the judiciary, some projects were done without cost-benefit analysis. You find in some courts that a big court consuming a lot of money was done, but when you look at the cases that come in that court, there are very few. In other instances, Mr. Speaker, there were delay of payments of contractors, despite finishing their work, despite public works issuing certificates, and the contractor is not paid. And we would ask ourselves why. And probably it's probably they just want to frustrate the contractor so that they can give the contractor that they wish. And finally, Mr. Speaker, I know there are many issues, but I'll just touch a few. The other big issue that we need to look at is the issue of government land. We have a lot of government land without titles, be it schools, prisons, and even the judicial land. Mr. Speaker, this is something that the National Land Commission needs to look at, and also the Minister of Land. We need to secure our land. We need to give ownership documents that relate to our land, and so that it is not grabbed. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I support.
Yes, Honorable Jeanette, Sheikh.
Yeah, Sheikh, yeah. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move an amendment. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that the motion be amended by inserting the following expression immediately after the expression 2018, subject to, what do you want? A, deletion of the committee recommendation contained in paragraph 395.2 of the report and substitution thereof with the following new recommendation. The Auditor General should, within 3 months after adoption of this report, undertake further audit in order to establish the circumstances in which restricted tendering was adopted in the construction of a model county office in Embu by the State Department of Environment and Natural Resources during the financial year 2014-15. B, deletion of the committee recommendation contained paragraph 395.5 of the report and substitution thereof with the following new recommendation. The Auditor General should, within 3 months after the adoption of this report, undertake further audit on the propriety of using restricted tendering for fencing projects at various meteorological projects by the Department of Environment and Natural Resources during the financial year 2014-15. C, deletion of the committee recommendation contained in paragraph 395.7 of the report and substitution thereof with the following new recommendation. The Auditor General should, within 3 months after adoption of the report, undertake further audit on the propriety of contracts to various suppliers to supply seedlings to various destinations by the State Department of Environment and Natural Resources during the financial year 2014-15. Mr. Speaker, the import of this amendment is that these are matters that required further scrutiny, Mr. Speaker, by the committee, and I've sought the indulgence of the chair of the committee that there were documents that were supposed to be supplied with the committee, Mr. Speaker, but because of the time, we didn't have enough time, so we want to address this matter in the subsequent report conclusively, so that the auditor can do further audit as required by the committee, as directed by the committee in their findings. So, Mr. Speaker, that is the most important thing of the most important part of the amendment, Mr. Speaker. I request Dr. Iseli to second the amendment.
Honorable Simiu Eseri.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wish to second the amendment by Honorable Jeanette. This is an amendment within the committee in the sense that new information coming in will need further audit review because there's an implication that these meteorological establishments are actually considered as security installations. So the auditor needs to relook at it and will be able to report in the next report that we'll submit to the House. I beg to second.
Honorable members, I propose a question that the motion be amended by inserting the following expression immediately after the expression 2018, subject to A, deletion of the committee recommendation contained in paragraph 395.2 of the report and substitution thereof with the following new recommendation. The Auditor General should, within 3 months after adoption of this report, undertake further audit in order to establish the circumstances in which restricted tendering was adopted in the construction of a model county office in Embu by the State Department of Environment and Natural Resources during the financial year 2014-2015. B, deletion of the committee recommendation contained in paragraph 395.5 of the report and substitution thereof with the following new recommendation. The Auditor General should, within 3 months after the adoption of this report, undertake further audit on the propriety of using restricted tendering for fencing projects at various meteorological projects by the Department of Environment and Natural Resources during the financial year 2014-2015, and C, deletion of the committee recommendation contained in paragraph 395.7 of the report and substitution thereof with the following new recommendation. The Auditor General should, within 3 months after adoption of this report, undertake further audit on the propriety of contracts to various suppliers to supply seedlings to various destinations by the State Department of Environment and Natural Resources during the financial year 2014 and 2015. Number members, the question now on the floor is not on the report. It's particularly on this proposed recommendation, proposed amendment. And I would like to get, is it the mood of the House? Other members, we shall, other members, I'll give 1 or 2 members, and then we shall be making progress, one from this side and one from this side. I will start with Honorable Kenan, and then I'll get one from this side.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as a matter of procedure, it is the report as amended, and therefore we are debating the report as amended by the Honorable Junet. Mr. Speaker, I want to take this opportunity to thank the members of this particular committee led by the indomitable Honorable Wandai for bringing a very, very concrete report, Mr. Speaker. But, Mr. Speaker, these reports have always been there. Public account is as old as this parliament, Mr. Speaker. We have always generated reports. But, Mr. Speaker, it's the high time that we really appreciate why the framers of our constitution and our standing orders decided to have a critical committee called Public Accounts and also Public Investment Committee, because they are one deals. In other jurisdictions, you only have public accounts. In the Kenya context, we have Public Accounts and Public Investments Committee, and right now we have the Special Funds Committee. If you go to Germany, they have Public Accounts and Budget Committee. Mr. Speaker, there are critical issues that have, one is the institutional mechanism, Mr. Speaker, that the committee, this particular committee, unique committee, very important committee uses in auditing government ministries' accounts, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, there are 2 critical institutions, the Office of the Auditor General. In particular, I want to mention the Office of the Auditor General, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this office must be strengthened if really we want to get value for money. This office, Mr. Speaker, must be supported so that they can get experts in different fields, Mr. Speaker, because this is an era of ICT, this is an era of technology, Mr. Speaker. This is one thing that has been lacking, and therefore I want to urge the members here, if you really want to get value for your money, please empower the Office of the Auditor General. That is the most effective way of holding government institutions actually to account. Secondly, Mr. Speaker.
Order, Honorable Kenan. What is your point of order, Honorable TJ Kajwang?
No. Mr. Speaker, we are on the amendment, and let us use our time correctly. We only have 1 hour to debate this bill. And already...
What is your point of order, Honorable TJ Kajwang?
My point is this, that is the honorable member relevant? Because he is actually contributing to the main motion when he should be contributing to the amendment. And this is what members will be doing, taking advantage of contributing to be supporting the amendment when in actual fact, and we have been lining here to contribute to the main motion.
Very well. Just as I said, honorable members, what is now on the floor is a amendment. Is the amendment proposed by Honorable Junet. That is what, so Honorable Kenan, are you done? Honorable Kenan. Honorable Kenan.
Oh, yes, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I wouldn't want to challenge my friend, but I have a problem with that interpretation. But all the same, because I thought what is before us right now is the report of the committee as amended.
Honorable Kenan, I have already given direction to that. It is not amended. Okay. It is on the floor now.
Let me take this. Mr. Speaker, what the Honorable Junet has said is critical. It's important because it's a good amendment. It informs the report. It enriches the report, Mr. Speaker. It gives value actually to the report, and therefore I support that particular amendment. Nothing stops me now in contributing to the report. Yes. So Mr. Speaker, on that particular amendment, the input of this, I hope, and I do know, and I really appreciate the stature and the thinking of the Honorable Junet as an astute legislator here. This particular amendment is a product of the committee. That's what I'm told. Meaning, therefore, it is meant to enrich the report. which is very good. And therefore, for me, I support, and I hope that the other members will support, because I really wanted to contribute to the main report. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable TJ Kajwang.
No, I support.
Support. I'll get one or two other members. All the members. The members, and I can tell from the interest, I will not, they will get a chance. Honorable Kimani Chongwa.
Thank you, Honorable Chair, and I rise to support the amendment by Honorable Junet. And principally, Chair, I have to state this categorically, that we must desist from the idea that DCI, EACC are the hallmark of morality and ethical behavior in this country, Honorable Speaker. And other independent offices like that of the Auditor General must also be given their due powers and mandate in line with the Constitution. And therefore, the fact that the report is a product of the Auditor General's work, and most of the audit questions and audit queries raised by the Auditor General, which are then reviewed by PAC and PIC, as Honorable Opio Andai's committee has done, are actually products of the Auditor General's work. Therefore, behoves of us, before we send anything to DCI and EACC, and it is not lost on us, Mr. Speaker, that the office of the DCI and EACC in this day and age are being used for other ulterior motives, Honorable Speaker, Honorable Chair. And therefore, I would be very careful to ask DCI and EACC to pick up a matter that is not conclusively concluded by the Office of the Auditor General for investigations, as if we are drawing culpability on certain people even before establishing the real facts. It is only fair, as Honorable Newtonet says, that these matters are first taken. The Auditor General is given an opportunity, just like happens in the auditing profession, Honorable Speaker, when there are questions raised to management through management letters following the work of an auditor. The management is given the first opportunity to respond. And in the subsequent year's audit, the auditor also has a right to give the management an opportunity to show what corrective measures they have taken. Therefore, what Honorable Junet is proposing is not just right, but it is what should be happening in normal audit processes. And therefore, I strongly support that amendment, that the Auditor General is given an opportunity 3 months after the adoption of this report, which is basically in subsequent years, to go back and check what has been done since then. So that if nothing has been done, then you can do the further recommendation now to involve DCI and EACC. Otherwise, we should forestall, and I say this, Honorable Speaker, because even as members of Parliament, especially those of you whose CDF accounts are before the Public Accounts Committee, you should be very careful to rush to DCI, to EACC, in an age, Honorable Speaker, where I want to say without any fear of contradiction, some of these institutions are being used for ulterior political motives. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Honorable members, it is 1 p.m. Just to remind us that what is on the floor and what will be on the floor next time this order is scheduled by the House Business will be the amendment by Honorable Junet. After that is dispensed with, then we will revert back to the committee report as amended or as the decision of the House at that time. Honorable members. The time being 1 p.m., this House starts adjourned till today, Wednesday, 28th November 2018 at 2:30 p.m.